The third model we'll look at is Senge's systematic model. Peter Senge became known for his work on the learning organization, particularly through his book, The Fifth Discipline. The fifth discipline to which the book title refers is systems thinking, which addresses some of the difficult-to-explain phenomena we see in organizations and in change processes. Senge writes about what he terms profound change in organizations. He uses biological and ecological metaphors to describe the processes that limit organizational growth and the implementation of proposed changes. Senge believes, to understand why sustaining significant change is so elusive, we need to think less like managers and more like biologists. All growth processes in nature arise out of the interplay between reinforcing growth processes and limiting processes. The seed contains the possibility for a tree, but it realizes that possibility through an emergent, reinforcing growth process. The seed sends out small feelers. These primitive roots draw in water and nutrients, leading to further expansion, more water, nutrients, and so on. The initial growth process is underway, but how far it progresses depends on a host of limits: water, nutrients of the soil, space for the roots to expand, warmth. Eventually, as the tree begins to extend beyond the surface, other limits will come into play: sunlight, space for the tree's branches to spread, insects that destroy the tree's leaves. When growth stops prematurely before the organism reaches its potential, it is because the growth has encountered constraints that could be avoided, that are not inevitable. Other members of the same species will grow more because they do not encounter the same constraints. Any particular limit mentioned above, not enough water, nutrients, or space for the root system, could potentially keep the seed from growing. Senge points out that the kind of systems thinking that explains why different tree seeds grow to different heights, shapes, and states of health, or not at all, can be applied to change. To understand how profound change can be nurtured and sustained requires us to understand the many self-reinforcing growth processes that will support and enable change, and the limiting process that, if not addressed, will stunt or kill it. A self-reinforcing process is a positive feedback loop or virtuous cycle. A limiting process is a negative feedback or vicious cycle. We look at virtuous and vicious cycles in more clarity in the practitioner element in the context of sustaining change. Understanding the various reinforcing and balancing feedback loops that will affect a change process allows us to look for ways to strengthen the reinforcing processes and to mitigate those that would work against the process. Perhaps some of the constraints can be lifted too. For example, limited working hours. Time available is often a constraint in organizational change. Could be overcome with more people committed to the change program. This diagram is adapted from Senge's book, Dance of Change, and helps explain Senge's view on organic change. In his book, Senge says, "The curve in the diagram is not idiosyncratic to organizational change efforts. It traces the pattern followed by anything that grows in nature, even something that grows and dies prematurely. In fact, the S-shaped growth pattern occurs so frequently in biology that it has its own name, sigmoidal growth. All individual organisms, from humans to beetles, likewise grow according to the same pattern, accelerating, then gradually slowing until full adult size is reached. This pattern recurs again and again in nature. The biological world teaches that sustaining change requires understanding the reinforcing growth processes and what is needed to catalyze them, and addressing the limits that keep change from occurring. Effectively, what gets in the way? And the challenge of getting started at all? And then the challenge of sustaining things once they have begun. Senge and his co-authors describe with great clarity the challenges of initiating change, of sustaining the transformation, and of redesigning and rethinking the organization. 1. Initiating change. People feeling they do not have enough time. People finding insufficient coaching and support. People unable to see the relevance of the change. Problems with leaders not walking the talk. 2. Sustaining the transformation. Anxieties about job security, learning, trusting others in new situations, and loss of control. How to measure change, the tension between measurement as learning and as assessment. Using culture so that change in a pilot group is not seen as a cult activity. 3. Redesigning and thinking. Governance for change program and organization as control or as direction setting. Spreading new practices effectively. Giving meaning to strategy and vision. Throughout, they demonstrate some of the typical feedback loops that occur as these challenges are faced. They provide many practical examples from a range of organizations and offer suggestions as to how to nurture and grow change through to maturity. Kotter's approach to changing organizations is based on highly visible, large-scale transformative change, driven primarily by the senior leadership of the organization through the guiding coalition. By contrast, Senge suggests that profound change occurs when small-scale initiatives are skillfully nurtured by well-aligned leadership at all levels of the organization and then spread. His thinking is closest to the organism, culture, and flux and transformation metaphors discussed previously. The flux and transformation metaphor helps to explain how change can occur in very large and complex organizational systems where the nature and extent of the force involved are not easy to map. We do the best we can with systems thinking, notice the effects on the systems of any interventions we make, and adjust our behavior accordingly. Sometimes, the best we can do is to decide on the most important outcomes we wish to achieve and try to intervene in ways that direct the organization's energy accordingly. Both Kotter's and Senge's views contain significant truth, and different change situations and organizational cultures may call for emphasis on one or the other approach.